name is Sarah Niles. This episode is about narcissism. It's a revealing explanation of what creates them and how do they behave and why in a very short episode. Excuse me. First of all, the general term narcissism is not the same as NPD, which is full narcissistic personality disorder, meaning you met full criteria over time for a disorder of the personality. Narcissistic traits are behaviors that are consistent with narcissism. And degrees and level of narcissism mean that you can be a classic covert narcissist who is barely noticed, or you can be a malignant, sadistic, psychopathic narcissist who murders and creates mayhem and possibly gets away with it. The serial killers are like this. So, what is a narcissist? Who are they? They're everywhere. They're your brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, partners. They're everywhere. And how are they created? By a family dysfunction, usually. An age-old question, nature or nurture, is usually nature and nurture. Very seldom one or the other, is usually both to varying degrees. For example, a sensitive child who has difficulty bonding would be more susceptible to developing traits of narcissism than a child who it easily bonds, because the first failure of a narcissistic child in development, because remember, children are not narcissistic, they just are in development, is to fail to attach. This is not as simple as it sounds, because a child in a large family can hide this failure to bond and attach by behaving like the rest of his family. They mimic. They learn to act and deceive, perhaps even be obliging and compromising, and they have the appearance of a healthy child. But in many cases, red flags appear early. The lack of bonding is usually because there is at least one person in that house, family, or close connection who sets a bad example and creates a bad perception that gets in the way of this bonding. And yes, everybody says it's the mother. It's not usually the mother in most cases. Sometimes it is, because the mother's a narcissistic too. And that's pretty clear, because she will have the behaviors of a narcissist. In a good enough role, either mother or father, there's usually another parent involved who tends to dominate, control, and abuse. That would be your primary narcissist in most cases. There are always exceptions to the rule. In a case, one example of mother and father, we will let the father be the abuser in this case. Women are very abusive too when they are abusive, but in this case, the father is the dominant bully who gets control, gets his way, everybody jumps, it's his kingdom. So if you are a sensitive child who has less ability to trust and bond, and you see the dominant person, it becomes a matter of safety. Who do you side with? The lesser, subordinate, or the dominant person? The perception begins there. They begin to see the dominant person as the one in control, and it's safer to side with them. Once this is done, an alienation occurs between the good enough parent and the good enough children. There's usually scapegoats assigned, and this child is watching this. If the scapegoat stands up and challenges, the scapegoat gets punished. So you have a child who has separated themselves mentally and emotionally from the family, and over the time they tend to develop this as a safety strategy. But by the teenage years, it becomes something else. It becomes a power attempt. It gives them a sense of valor to be able to control their mind and control who can hurt them or who cannot. In a narcissistic family where the child is more externalizing. You can see his behaviors. There's usually red flags there in the beginning. If you've ever watched Evil Among Us, you'll hear them say, looking back, there were red flags. Usually there's killing animals, being mean for no reason, enjoying the suffering of their siblings. All of this are the early indicators that this child not only has detached, he's alienated too. That's two. And if you detach and alienate from your primary good enough role model, you tend to generalize that to the world, to the society. And who becomes the God in this case? If you can't trust the first person or the people out there, the world, you can trust no one, you become your own God in your head and your mind. You become entirely entitled and selfish. And there's another element. It's always, always present. Let's see, what is that for? Always present. Let me stop for just a minute. Okay, thank you all for following or for watching. There is another element that's always involved if you're developing a dangerous narcissistic person who's capable of hurting others and enjoying it, for example. That's on the extreme end. You're going to have some anger developed that's usually from childhood, but it's suppressed and hidden. It's like a bucket. And in this bucket, all of these wrongs are accumulating. Being bullied at school, or being the bully in some cases. Feeling as though you have been mistreated and treated powerless. If you see abuse, if this child sees abuse in the home and he cannot control it, he's going to be, or she's going to be angry at someone. And it's not safe to be angry at the primary abuser, so they will be angry usually at the mother or the innocent parent or the scapegoat sibling. This anger tends, if it's not easily expressed within the family without getting into trouble, they stuff it. They stuff it, they keep stuffing it, they keep stuffing it. And they feel wronged. And as they get older, they start to develop revenge plots. These are in extreme cases that they hide. There's usually red flags, remarks being made about, I got away with that, or they won't get away with that, or extreme rage fits that come out of nowhere. It's usually coming from this bucket of stored up so-called wrongs. And this is a matter of perception. It can either be actual wrongs done to a child or imagined wrongs done to the child. And as the toxic entitlement grows, so does the propensity for malignant narcissism. A malignant narcissist usually has more than just a lack of attachment and alienation, selfish traits. They also have a desire for revenge. The FBI began to do research on the behavior of serial killers and rapists. And in the 1980s and early 2000s, they came up with MOs of how these people behave. One of the things that they noticed that's common among all these really dangerous malignant narcissists, sociopaths and psychopaths, was saving up the anger. Injustice collecting is what it was called. Grievance collecting, injustice collecting, which is a term created by Mary Ellen O'Toole of the FBI. They start to collect this in their heart, in their anger bucket. They feel justified. They may be able to function on the outside, do the charming bit we've all seen, go to work every day, get along with people on the exterior, and then you see them on the news 20, 30 years later. And you know exactly what I'm talking about with these shooting escapades in which they write manifestos of how they were wronged and how they have to get even because they were cultivating